Hello and welcome to our new novel study that I am so excited about. I have found a wonderful book on Epic that you can read along to. Sadly, though, it doesn't have the audiobook or the read to me feature, so that is why I'm still going to be doing these YouTube videos to kind of, if you want to listen along to the story, you can, but you definitely do not have to. You can read by yourself if you'd like to. But I just thought I would have this option for you if you want it. So we're still going to be doing the YouTube videos, and our book is going to be called Minkus and the Donkey. Hopefully all of you have your book assigned to you on Epic. Otherwise, just look up Mikis and the Donkey and it should pop up. It is a very short read. It's only 96 pages. And the chapters are very, very short. That is why I will be reading 4 of them to you today, because they're only a page or 2 each. Okay. So starting on page 9, chapter 1. Grandpa was sitting under the big sycamore tree. It was impossible to miss him. He was always the one who did most of the talking, and whenever he talked, he waved his arms around in the air like he was trying to shoo away a bunch of flies. "Papooey!" cried Mikis when he saw his grandpa. "Shouldn't you be in school?" asked Grandpa. "School is done for today, Papooey." "Already?" said Grandpa. "You youngsters seem to spend more time playing than learning. When I was your age, we had to work out in the olive groves for hours and take care of the animals, too." Grandpa threw his hands in the air again. His hair was as white as snow, but his eyebrows were as black as coal. Mikis sometimes used to give them a rub because he was sure Grandpa dyed them, the way Grandma dyed her hair whenever she was going somewhere special. "I have a surprise waiting for you at home," said Grandpa. "What? What?" said Mikis, and he started running, even though he didn't know what the surprise was yet. "Go see Yaya. I'll be there soon." Chapter 2. Mikis flew out of the village square. He raced up the narrow alleyways, left, right, up and up, past the house with 1,000 flowers, around the corner, past the giant cactus, up the steps, through the doorway, and into the house, where he found Grandma busy with the big spring cleaning. "Yaya!" cried Mikis. He could hardly catch his breath. "Where's my surprise?" Grandma told Mikis to sit quietly for a moment. She put a glass of cold water on the table in front of him. "Drink this," she said. "You got here early." "I ran all the way." Grandma cut a slice of bread and spread it with jam. With his mouth still full, Mikis asked where the surprise was. He fidgeted on the chair. He crumpled up the tablecloth. Then his bread almost went down the wrong way, and he coughed so much that he sent crumbs flying everywhere. "Yaya, where is it?" Grandma shook her head and looked at Mikis. "First finish your bread and jam, Mikis, and then you've calmed down you can look. In the stable." Mikis jumped to his feet, flew down the steps, and shot across the yard to the stable, but it was so dark in there that he couldn't see a thing. But that didn't work because all he could hear was himself panting. He took a few steps forward and bumped into the wooden planks of the pen where Grandpa kept the goats in the winter. He leaned against the woods and swallowed down the last piece of bread. Then he heard a rustling sound. Mikis stood on tiptoes and tried to look over at the top of the planks. All he could see was black, but within the darkness was one spot that was even darker. He saw 2 long ears sticking up above the planks. Mikis found a stool and climbed up onto it. "Well?" Mikis heard a voice behind him. Grandpa and Grandma were standing in the doorway with their arms around each other's shoulders. "Is it for me?" asked Mikis. Grandpa and Grandma started laughing. "What next?" they said. "That donkey has to work. It's not a pet or a playmate, Mikis." Mikis stroked the donkey's ears. It was 6 feet from the bottom of the ears to the very tip, and then 6 feet all the way back down again. Well, that's what it felt like. The donkey's ears were so long that there seemed to be no end to them. "Come here," said Grandpa. "You can sit on her back for a little while." Grandpa lifted Mikis over the planks and put him down on the donkey's warm back. "You'll need to think of a name for her," he said. "And don't forget, she's a girl." Okay, so how your novel study is set up. You will want to pause the video here because you need to answer questions from chapter 1 and 2. Okay, so chapters 1 and 2 are put together, and there are only 5 questions you have to answer. All right, so go ahead and go answer those from your novel study and come back, and I'll be waiting. Waiting. Welcome back. I just want to say, too, that if it helps that you want me to read along to you, is a very good thing to do is to put your book up on Epic and then play my video and follow along as I'm reading to you, okay? So not just listening to me, but listening and following along on Epic. You're not going to be able to watch me and follow along on Epic. You can only listen to me and follow along on Epic, because otherwise, unless you have, I'm reading off of an iPad, unless you want to read off of something else on Epic and then watch me read to you. But I think the best thing is to have two tabs open, one with Mikis and the Donkey on Epic and the other one on YouTube with this video, and you listen and read along with the video while I am reading it. Okay, so let's go on to chapters 3 and 4 before you answer those questions in the novel study. Page 13, chapter 3. Minkus ran his hands through the donkey's soft fur. Grandpa and Grandma had gone back inside for something to eat. How come you don't have a name yet? Asked Minkus, but the donkey didn't reply. She just shuffled around the stable. Minkus slid down from her back. He tickled her neck, stroked her mane, and said, "Weren't you important enough to have a name?" The donkey licked the planks. Minkus could see her more clearly now. She was brown, and her nose was paler, almost white. "Of course you're important," said Minkus. "In fact, you're so important that we have to come up with a very fine name for you, and you're going to help me." Minkus held the donkey's halter and took a good look at her. "I'm going to list 500 names now, and if you hear a name you like, you have to blink." Minkus thought about all the famous singers he's ever heard of, and he thought about the girls at school and their moms and their grandmas, and he tried to remember all the prettiest names from the stories that his teacher, Miss Chrissy, had told the class. "Okay," he said to the donkey. "This is important. This is for the rest of your life. Do you understand?" The donkey just stared at Minkus really hard. "I'm going to start with a test name just to practice, to see if you understand. So this isn't a real name yet, but when you hear a name you like, you're going to blink. But no blinking until then, okay?" Minkus came up with a test name, a name he'd never heard before. He put his mouth up close to the donkey's ear, and he whispered, "Toski?" The donkey was startled. She took a step back, and she blinked. "Good, so you understand what you need to do," said Mikis. He knew donkeys weren't stupid. Then he started listing a whole lot of names. Zenobia, Fortini, Pandora, Varara. "You have to blink, remember?" Philadelphia, Julia. The donkey stood still and listened to Minkus, but he didn't react at all. She just looked at Minkus with big, unblinking eyes as he said the names more and more loudly. "Sorita? Amirati? Thessaloniki? Rita? Miffy? Delphi?" Minkus suggested a whole load of weird names and wonderful names, but the donkey just didn't even twitch. Her ears pointed straight up like towers. "Zephyros?" shouted Minkus, but that didn't count because it was a boy's name. "Elena?" He hoped the donkey wouldn't pick this time, because Elena was a girl in his class. She was the nicest girl in his class, and he didn't want to have to tell her that he'd named Grandma and Grandpa's donkey after her. Finally, Minkus ran out of names, so he said, "Toski?" again, and the donkey blinked. Chapter 4, on page 17. "Aren't you done yet?" asked Grandpa, coming into the stable. Minkus told him it had taken a long time, but he and the donkey had finally agreed. "Agreed? What do you mean?" asked Grandpa. "That donkey helped you decide?" "Of course," said Minkus. "Since when do donkeys get a say in what they're called?" Minkus shrugged his shoulders. Grandpa took Mikis's hand and led him out of the stable into the kitchen, where Grandma gave him a piece of baklava to eat. "So," she said, "what did you decide?" "He let the donkey choose for itself," said Grandpa. Grandma frowned at Grandpa. "What do you mean?" she asked. Grandpa told her that Mikis and the donkey had come up with a name together. "Together?" asked Grandma. "I think the donkey was allowed to vote," said Grandpa. To vote on the best name? Grandpa nodded. Do you actually want to know what her name is? Said Mikis. Of course, out with it, my boy, said Grandpa. Grandma and Grandpa started to laugh. They've never heard such a strange name before, but Grandpa smiled and said, That's a fine name, Minkus. Now run along home, or Mom and Dad will be worried. See you tomorrow, said Mikis. Good, good, and then you'll come tomorrow you can go for a little ride with Toski.